Hey, writers, welcome to another Writing Wings episode. And in this episode, I am actually just going to give you a story time. I'm going to take you through my process of when I accidentally wrote my first manuscript. And yes, I said that right. I did not intend to write a book when I was doing this, but it ended up coming out that way. I want to encourage you mainly on if you are writing a story and you're telling your story, you're sharing that with your audience. I want to encourage you to prosper from painful experiences by sharing what you learned from healing from the pain, because there is a group of people that are going to benefit because you did not allow the painful experience to break you. And really, the painful experiences that we go through, the enemy would love that we would keep silent. He would love that we would not share with other people, because once we start to share with other people what we have been through, it causes other people to become more aware that they're not the only person, or they're not the only people that have suffered through this. And they're going to receive encouragement, and they're going to come out of their dark pits. They're going to come out of their dark places because they have heard you share your story. I want you to type in the comments roar. I believe that if you're watching this video, God is requiring you, or he's challenging you to begin to find your roar and to find your voice. Whereas in times past, you may have been muzzled because you were embarrassed about what you have been through. You had so much shame and bondage around what you have been through. But I believe that once you start writing out your story, once you start writing out the victory that you experience, and even if you're still working through some things, because all of us, we still are working on some things, right? But even if you're still working through those things, you have power, or you have something inside of you that's telling you to keep going, even though you know that you have this painful experience, or you know that you have been through something painful. And so I even want to commend you that you are trying to take this leap, because there's a lot of people that I coach that end up not publishing their book because they feel so much shame. They feel so much embarrassment from what they went through. And then sometimes it's not even really their embarrassment. They're really more worried about what other people are going to think about them. They're worried about what their family's going to say about them. They're thinking, oh my gosh, should I share this? My dad is going to be upset. I don't know what he's going to say. And really, we should really think about, are people's lives going to be transformed from this story? Or are we hiding this story because of one person? And we're just guessing what their response or their reaction is going to be. So you have to make a decision as a writer and as a storyteller. Am I here to change lives, or am I here to manage other people's emotions? And you can't, because whatever you do, they're probably going to get mad at anything that you do anyways. So you might as well tell your story. If this is your authentic story, this is your experience, get it out. All right, so I'm going to jump into this. I'm going to share with you how I accidentally started my manuscript. I was on a sabbatical from teaching. I had been teaching for 4 years, and one of my leaders suggested that I take the sabbatical. And because I had a crazy end of the year. I was in so much pain and anguish, but it was like an internal pain. Like there was nothing outwardly happening to me. Nothing was happening to me on the outside that I could tell you was causing this pain. And it took the Lord to show me that I had to process grief. And one of the ways that I was going to process grief was through writing. And so I remember taking some time out during this sabbatical. I just started writing all these things that I was upset about with God. I was upset about my father passing away. I was upset about my childhood trauma. I was upset about this and about that. And so I started just telling God, I'm upset that this happened. I'm upset. I'm angry. And these raw emotions, like it was anger. So much anger was inside of me. And once I got all of those dark thoughts, like severely dark thoughts, just started roaming from my head. And I started just writing out all the dark thoughts that I had. And once I got that out of my system, and I was just sitting there, because I did it for hours. And again, I think I was just in my quiet time with God. I don't think I was not looking to do a creative project. I was just like, I need to talk to God today, because I don't know what's going on with me. And I gotta get a diagnosis, and I gotta get it from the King. And so I was just sitting there, just pouring out my heart and writing. And after some time, I don't know if it was an hour or two, I was like, oh my gosh, this felt really good. The things that I'm writing is super dark. It's super dreary. It's something that I probably wouldn't share with people, but this is like, I'm glad I got this off of my chest. And I felt this light weight come off of me. I felt this weight come off of me, and I felt lighter because of the heaviness that lifted off of me once I finally confronted the internal dialogue that was running rampant in my head. The things that I probably didn't want to acknowledge because of being religious, or because thinking that I shouldn't be mad at God, or I shouldn't be doing this or that. And I couldn't help it. And there's so many of us that we just can't help how we feel. And instead of stuffing those emotions down, we got to just express them and release them over to God. And that's what was happening with my body. I was feeling the pain because I was not able to acknowledge, I was not aware of what was actually going on in my mind. I did not acknowledge the thoughts, the conversations, even though they were dark conversations, it still needed to be acknowledged and get out of my system so that I can now address it, or so that God could help me to address these thoughts and to know this is what's happening with you. This is why you are experiencing a lot of pain in your body. You refuse to acknowledge this pain point in your life. You refuse to acknowledge that this is still bothering you. And now let's confront it. Now that you have it on paper, you have it on this document, let's go. You've already expressed it. It's come out of your system. So that means that it's in you. And once I started to do that, after I did that, I decided to use, I was like, you know what? I feel much better. So I actually started writing poetry, and it was like dark poetry. And I kept using like figurative language because, I taught English, and I was like, yeah, I kept saying like this thing. And I was just like, this is darkness. And this idea kept popping up, and I just kept writing poetry. And mind you, I don't even write poetry. I just kept feeling like this was a poem, and it would be a dark poem. And then I thought to myself, okay, now that you're done writing this dark poem, what is something bright? What is something great on the other side of this? Because you are a person that knows God, and so that you know that He's a good God. I know these experiences don't change the fact that God is still good. And so now let's tap into the light. And so I started writing out poems that were contradictory, or the antithesis to the dark poem, so that I could get that out of my system. And then when I realized, I said, when I got out of the dark sessions and I went to the light, I felt even better because I didn't stay in a place of gloom and doom and destruction. I was able to be catapulted into a place where I had resolved that God was still good, even through the midst of the painful experiences that I have endured. And so then I just felt like the God was just telling me, I said, this is so great that I got this out of my system. And God's like, I'm glad that you feel that way, because the same way that you were able to express yourself and you were able to share this, you were able to write this, I want you to share this story with people, because your story, the childhood trauma that you endured, is for other people to hear about, so that they know that they can be triumphant. They can experience triumph through the midst of these dark times, even as adults, because there's so many different adults that are not healed from childhood trauma. And you can encourage them to seek out the help that's necessary, and to not be embarrassed or to be shamed or to feel any type of shame because of what they've endured. And so when he told me that, I said, oh no, I wasn't intending to share this with anybody. I was intending, I just was trying to talk to you. Like, no. So at that point, I started to become uncomfortable. And when I became uncomfortable, it was like God was pulling me, and I was not going to be comfortable until I just started getting the words out. So then I started just expressing more words, and I started thinking about, okay, how can I start organizing this story? How can I put this book together where it makes sense and I'm not just bleeding, or I'm not just saying all these dark things? I even felt like God was showing me that it was irresponsible of me just to stop in a gloom and doom state. And I had to show the reader that even though I experienced this valley, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And this was the light. This was the message of light that God was sharing with me, that got me out of a sunken place, that got me out of these low and dark places. And so I started to organize the book in that way, because during the sabbatical, I really had nothing to do anyways. Like, I didn't plan what I wanted to do, or I had other things I did want to do, but I didn't realize that this was something that God wanted me to do until I got into the project. And I was like, you know what? You have the time to do this right now. You know that you teach middle school, and it's going to get crazy once you get back into the classroom. So you need to take this time while your brain is being, while you don't have all this pressure on your mind from teaching and doing this and doing that. You have to take this time to begin to process this information. And while you're writing out this information, not only are you going to help heal other people and heal the little child in certain people, but you're also healing yourself. And so that was the encouragement and the motivation that I had. I felt a burden from God to write this book because of how many people were going to be impacted. And I started to think about how, as a writing teacher, I taught my students how to organize things. So I said, you know what? I know how to organize all these things. I've written several papers, right? I've been to grad school. And so now I need to use those things that I've learned and apply it here and be more organized here. And so that's how I accidentally started writing my first manuscript. And then when I wrote out that manuscript, it was so cool. One of my mentees told me, I started sharing with her some of the manuscript. And she said, how about you teach people how you did what you did? And I said, what do you mean? Because I talked about how this book was so cathartic, how it helped heal me and help heal the little child in me. And she said, okay, well, how about you show other individuals how they can do that? And so from this manuscript, I ended up writing a workbook because there were steps that I took in order to heal while writing. And so I created a framework so that other individuals that were interested in healing and using writing as a tool to heal, I started to give them instructions and to give them prompts so that they could be successful or so that they could move during their healing season. Because I never had anyone to tell me, you know what, you could do this, you could write this, or you could talk about this. It was just something that came over me. And I wish that someone did that for me. And so most of the time when you wish that somebody else did something for you, maybe you're supposed to be the person to create that project. Maybe you're supposed to be the person to write that book. What is a book that you wish that other people, or you wish that you had when you were XYZ? I wish I had this book when I was 17 years old. Okay, what is that book about? And why do you wish that you had that book? You would be the person to write that book then if you've never seen that book before. And so I took that information, or I took that feedback from my mentee, and I decided to create a workbook based off of that book. And if you have it, it's called Healing Through Writing. And it takes you through my 7 A's of healing. And even from that, because I've been able to teach from that class and share that information with other people, I've expanded in the 7 A's of healing. And so that's what's going to happen once you start pouring out information. You just begin writing, you just begin your project. You're going to get ideas after ideas after ideas. Many of us are stagnant in our creativity or our creative writing projects because you are not even taking the first leap. And so take the first leap, just start writing something and see where that's going to lead you. See where that's going to take you, and stop trying to know everything from the beginning. I want you to go ahead and let me know if this helped you in the comments. I would love to hear back from you. What do you think about my story of accidentally writing my first manuscript? I hope this encouraged you, and I hope that you are encouraged to share your story and to not allow the enemy or anyone else, any taunting voices, any external voices to cause you to kowtow or capitulate and not listen to what God has commanded you to do. If He's commanded you to share your story, then be confident that He's going to get you through this season. Be confident that He's going to carry you through as you write this next book or this next devotional. All right. I hope to leave a great legacy in writing with y'all later. And I want to build iconic dreams with you. Love you like a leader. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.